Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Phocuswright's European Market Specialist, Dirk Rogel.
Thanks, Douglas, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome in the heart of Europe, or to be honest, this is tiny and sharp. We don't know where the heart of Europe is precisely, and it's almost hard to find people who open up their heart for Europe at the moment. Even this is a point we have to talk about. So where is the heart of Europe, by the way? Paris, tiny, too far in the west. Germany, it's maybe Berlin, but it's too German. And London, it's doing its best to get out of this match at the moment. So it's 202 kilometers in the south of Amsterdam. It's called Brussels. It's the capital of the European Parliament and of the European Commission. And we have to talk about this issue. Probably this is the heart of Europe, at least in political things and in legislation things. And they're really wrapping up our industry. And we want to break down what happens here. It's a legislation debate. And let me welcome our guest. First is Andrea Bertoli. He's a deputy CEO of Last Minute Group. Welcome, Andrea. Andrea is, for instance, Andrea is in fear about the complexity of the European legislation and that restrictions regarding price transparency in the hotel business might swap over, for example, to tour operator business. Please welcome Michael Buller. He's Vorstand and Managing Director of Verband Internet Reisevertrieb, German Internet Travel Association. Welcome, Michael. Welcome on stage. You're in fear that Google's antitrust investigations might be pretty slow or always slower than innovations of Google. We have to talk about. Please welcome Christoph Klenner, the Secretary General of European Technology and Travel Service Association, ETSA. Welcome, Christoph. Christoph is professionally bundling the position of travel tech and OTA business in Brussels and is great in breaking down the complexity of legislation. And that's what we're doing here. So thanks for joining. Please welcome Michael Simon. He's General Manager Distribution outside the US for Marriott. Michael is always nearby when politicians, judges, or antitrust authorities are trying to understand the details of rate parity topics, and there are a few issues, I would assume. Last but not least, please welcome Tobias Wann. He's the CEO of Leisure Group, getting his microphone and coming pretty soon. He's in fear that local zoning and misuse restrictions, basically designed against Airbnb probably, are breaking down the professional holiday home business. Welcome, Tobias. So thanks for joining, gentlemen. We want to try to break down the complexity of European legislation. Before we start, I want to ask you, our audience, what do you think about this topic? So how is it for your business? Is European legislation something healthy, something that brought, at least in some cases, a significant value or some extra growth potential to your business, or even not? So please raise your hands or clap your hands in case you think or you had the experience that at least some parts of European legislation was healthy for your business. Okay, let's do the... No. I saw at least two hands, I have to say, so this was not big applause, but we have to take this into the protocol.
Can we put our hands up as well?
Sure.
So yeah.
Okay, so there are three. And
I can specify.
What's the opposite? Who thinks that the European legislation brought extra complexity, extra risk for your business? Please raise your hand or clap your hands. Okay, that's at least more, we have to say. And so let's dig down into the topics. Gentlemen, Christoph, maybe you can admit, you said there was a healthy thing the European legislation did. What was it?
Well, the irony is that and you've asked me this before, what legislation was healthy for the travel sector? It was in fact not regulation, but deregulation. Yeah. And when we look at what at the very beginning really unlocked travel distribution, it was the deregulation of the opening up of the skies first in the US in the 70s, and then only much later in Europe. It allowed airlines to fly freely from any point to any other point in Europe, and it made air travel more affordable and accessible to consumers. And that, together with the emergence of the internet, created an explosion in travel distribution and put the consumer in charge of their own choice and of their own purchasing. So, you know, a great move, I think, by regulators who had the vision that deregulation here is the right way ahead.
Let's stay on regulation. Another great thing might be, at least for some parts of you, the antitrust investigations of the European Commissions against Google. I think most of you have lots of expectations there. They started in 2015. You have a deep impact there, Christoph. So can you tell us the latest results? We didn't read that much the last year.
Well, I mean, obviously, a lot of time was wasted, to the frustration, I think, of everyone. I mean, Google is a great player in this space, and Google is a great innovator. But you know, Google has become very powerful when it comes to horizontal search. So you know, with a couple of quick fixes, in fact, you can solve this. You can you know, allow Google to continue to innovate, to continue also to play a prominent role in the travel vertical. But there needs to be a level playing field, because otherwise you end up throttling innovation. You'll have a couple of big guys left, and it's, you know, it's the small companies that might suffer. Where we stand now, very quickly maybe, and I don't want to monopolize the the session here. We have, as an industry, we've made some very pragmatic proposals to the European Commission as to how one can remedy the situation. And I think our proposal is fair in that it, you know, it gives Google the space to continue to innovate, but it kind of redraws the level playing field. And we are pushing very hard to get a formal decision quickly now, because it's been too long, and quite frankly, Google has been pulling the wool over the eyes of many politicians and officials over the last few years. So we are pressing now for an imminent decision.
So you're pushing hard. What are the practical guys are saying? What happens in between? There are coming lots of innovations.
I think it's this is a clear example why legislation is not working, because they are trying to fix a problem with Google when in 3 years the problem will not be Google but will be Facebook. If we saw some data before, you see it every day. I think 70–80% of time spent on smartphone is on an app owned by one company in the world. I think they crossed the 2 billion users. They are the ones that are collecting every day more data than any other company in the world, and data will be really the key success factor in the future. So I think this is an example that where regulation is not working, because it's always trying to catch up, and innovation moves faster than the bureaucrats in Brussels. And it's when you try to fix something ex post, you normally make it worse than just let it go. So I think it's really a challenge for the future.
But please stay on Google, Tobias. Is Google always faster in innovations than antitrust investigations can be?
I don't know. I mean, I think speed is clearly an issue here. I don't think that what I've seen happening in Brussels and in Berlin and everywhere else is, I mean, it takes a long time for them to understand what's going on in the industry. And indeed, I mean, the moment they come to a point where they can potentially make a decision, the issue has moved on. I'm totally with you, Andrea, and I want to add one more thing. Google still, I mean, has to lose something in this game here. We heard this morning, and we've read it many, many times, the big OTAs, the big players, they spend billions each year with Google. I mean, so there is, to a degree, Google is kind of regulated basically by its customers. Facebook doesn't have to lose, is not losing anything in this game. Facebook is coming new to this game, and they can sincerely disrupt this. So if there's an advantage of size for Facebook, I think we'll all feel it a lot harder than we've seen it with Google. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Michael, you're covering the German OTA business, the German online trade. How do you can fix the Google issue? Is there, you just have to wait, or can your members do something there?
We are involved and also in Brussels. What is funny at the end, the Germans often make regulation before there is a problem, and here is very clear and conflict at the end between a search engine and what the goal of a search engine should be, and the impact of everything. And there's no regulation or no point to clear that situation, and that's I always wondering. I was 1 year ago I was in Brussels and said, if you need another 5 years, then we don't care what your decision is, because it's happened what has happened. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Google is doing pretty more investigations. For example, they started investigations about home sharing, which is pretty important, as we all know. Michael Simon, we know a nice quote from Simon Breakwell. He said it's a fart in the thunder when the hoteliers are trying to fight against private accommodation. Anything to comment on this?
Well, I hope first he didn't mean it personal, but that aside. No, Airbnb and let's say peer-to-peer is certainly a model that's evolved and that's found its marketplace. It's been disrupting, and it's been disrupting in various fields. First, you could say, competition is not bad. Competition usually drives market, and I don't think the hotel industry as such is particularly, threatened by the competition of Airbnb. There's a couple things that are in favor of Airbnb. One is the generation change. If you look at, the Gen X are, phasing out, and we got the Gen Y and the millennials now, occupying that space, and so that pretty much plays in favor of the peer-to-peer, not for all instances. The leisure side is probably more infected than the business side. And so Airbnb serves the need in many cases that is, probably more on the vacation rentals than on the hotel side. I would say the one need that there is, and that's, either should be self-regulatory or should be coming from a legislative side, is to create an even level playing field. And I'm just using safety and security, fire, health safety as one example where, even a budget hotel, a small pension has to comply with government regulations. And if you're a private owner, that does that professionally. And if research is correct, almost half of the suppliers on Airbnb are professional renters, do not comply with that. That obviously creates an uneven level playing field.
Mm-hmm. We do have a lot of local misuse restrictions or zoning laws all over Europe, in some cities, Amsterdam or Barcelona, Berlin. What do they do with the industry, Tobias? By the way, please mark out, say, this should come to a European level now or not?
I mean, I want to make a general remark. When we talk about regulation right now in this industry, we're mostly talking about regulation in cities and driven by the sharing economy. I just want to make this very clear. Short-term rentals, vacation rental industry is a 100-year-old industry. And it's been there before Airbnb. It's been very big before Airbnb, and it will continue to be very big and growing. With regards to the regulations we are seeing right now, I think we have to make that distinction, and we have to also acknowledge that in this very large short-term rental industry, where the sharing economy is a small part, we don't have a problem. I mean, we are not talking about any families being trapped in holiday homes and not getting out because of security issues. I'm coming back to this. This has been a very solid, successful industry over many years. So that is the one point I want to make. The second point, we do have regulations when it comes to security of buildings and all these type of things. It's not that you can build an apartment and not basically make sure that it doesn't comply to local laws. So I think we need to look at this very, very differentiated, and with all the respect, I believe that the hotel industry is using the security argument basically to its own favor, and I don't really believe it's a big issue. So let's regulate where it basically makes sense. Let's actually find a common framework, but let's not actually try to kind of come up with like risks or invent or make up basically risks which are not there.
Can I just jump in with a follow-up question to that? For that long tail of accommodation, those rental by owner listings on Airbnb and for that matter other platforms. What does, if they should be regulated, I mean, what should this look like? I mean, if I'm renting out my apartment a few weekends a year, I shouldn't have to comply with the same types of standards that, you know, a 300-room Marriott should, right, in the center of Paris. So what does that look like? Do those individual owners really need to be regulated?
It's not about the regulation. It's, you know, there is a couple of things which is like registration on the one side, taxation is one, and the other one, the same thing. It's, you know, whether it's the site, and I'm not typically saying it has to be the site or the platform that has to move in here, but there has to be a level playing field because there is investments, there is work and processes that need to be paid for that create an uneven level playing field. And I'm not as much looking at the like, you know, the example that you mentioned, if you're renting it out like, you know, 4 times a year, but there are players on the platform which, as said, if research is correct, probably 40 to 50%. So every second supplier on the platform does that as a professional business nowadays.
It means there's a lot of discussion about 50%, and I think it's not proved. Yeah? And we have in Germany the Monopol Commission, and they're going all these arguments coming by taxes, by the security points, and at the end they come to the point, no, there is no problem in the market at the end, and there is no rule or no place for regulation, or we have to change something in the laws. Because I think there's something different between Uber, who really going against a German law, but I think there is no need for. And if we see the bigger picture of share economy, then I think we're coming in a time where jobs are not in the sum there that everybody have a job. I think the share economy will be a big part of the future, and we should support that.
So we will just wait what the European Commission finds out, DJ Comp, or what is the schedule?
If I may, I totally agree, but I think taxation is a point where we have to make some clarity. It's if you look at the Google, so we always talk about the competition of Google on the search field, but if you look at how much they pay on tax in each European country, it's ridiculous. I mean, every local regional OTA is paying the tax. Some countries very high, some is low, but paying 1-digit tax on your income, like all the giant in the internet, it's unfair from a competitive position. So I think taxation is a point that you have to address to make an even play.
But sorry, I must say a word here. I think it is unfair to say that this short-term rental industry, which is an 80 billion euro industry, run 70% by private homeowners, that these people are not paying tax, and that we're continuously calling these very valuable industry, so to say, an unfair industry against hotels. I think that is just not a fact. These people have built this industry over years on private investments. They are paying tax. They are a very important part of basically the leisure industry.
Good point, Tobias. I think we should shift topics just because we have quite a few of them. And we do have questions, Douglas, do we? Or not? Okay. We don't have questions in the audience?
No, we do have a question.
Okay.
And my mic is on. Yeah, please, okay.
Hi, I'm Jan from Travel 360 Benelux. I'm a bit surprised that you guys, you differentiate between professional, for Airbnb, for example, between professional owners and then people like Douglas here who says, I rent my apartment like 2-3 times a year. I understand it, but as far as legislation is concerned, shouldn't it be the consumer who's on focus here? And shouldn't the consumer be protected, whether he stays with, on the same way, whether he stays with someone from a leisure group or an individual, individual person who just rents it out, or with a professional Airbnb owner?
Well, you just...
Please.
I heard I don't need a mic anymore. So if you look at it, and if you look at the research that the European Commission has launched about 12 months ago, and just about a week ago, they launched what they call the mid-year or midterm review of it. And there's certain DGs, involved in there. And I'm completely with you. The one part, and if you look at consumer law, there is like the DG Justice. DG Just is involved, and DG Just, along with DG Grow and DG Digital, the digital part of things, they all did their individual researches, and from various parts, it's been now said that legislation needs to move in because three quarters of all kinds of suppliers across all industries that they researched for platform models seem to be reporting out that they have issues as a supplier, with the platform. And I think that's where the European Commission made a big distinction now, because they introduced a new word. Before we looked at B2B to C and C to C and C to B and whatever. They introduced the P as platform. So they're looking at that model now, and they're looking at it from different angles. And part of that is clarity and transparency. Clarity probably to the supplier side, transparency to the consumer side. And consumer protection certainly plays a big role in it. And one of the issues that is out there, there is consumer protection law established across the European Union. The issue is it cannot be enforced because it has to be enforced on each and individual case and not as a structural issue that is applied by platforms in general. The three segments or markets that have been identified by the European Union where they will introduce and propose legislation until the end of the year is retail, to a certain extent, is the gaming industry and the hotel sector.
And we don't know what's the result is, we have to say.
Yeah.
We know it in one point. We know it for Package Travel Directive. This is released. This is getting into national law until next year, and it's getting into several different national laws. Christoph, can you point it out? What's the issue there? We have to talk about linked travel arrangements that are getting into sales now. Are you satisfied with about Brussels decisions here?
Well, I think we see the same pattern emerge with package travel that we see emerge in different other areas, short-term rental, price parity and so on, is that one tries to shoehorn a new business reality into a regulatory framework which is long outdated and which was from the outset not based on principles. Because in my view, legislation to be simple and effective has to be based on principles. You have to regulate and enforce or set down and enforce principles, and not try to differentiate between business models and stuff like that. So what this package travel directive, which is an absolute monster, quite frankly, is trying to do, we have to be clear about it. It was designed through extensive lobbying by the tour operator industry to try to make the life of the online travel agents and online travel providers as difficult as possible. Mm-hmm. So now we are in a situation where we have to, comply with rules that are almost impossible to comply with. To give you one example, if you make a flight booking on an airline.com site and you're referred to a hotel offer on Expedia or Last Minute or wherever it may be, then suddenly those two partners who have a very loose marketing relationship and are just cross-selling each other's products have to start exchanging data, and the airline has to take out insolvency protection and all that sort of thing. It was never thought through. How is that actually going to be complied with by the marketplace? So we're faced with something that's, that's very, very difficult.
We're running almost out of time, gentlemen, but exactly, Andrea, how do you can handle package travel? Are you feeling safe?
It's impossible.
Okay.
No, it's a regulation that is impossible to comply with, and will be even worse because it's not a regulation, it's a directive, and not many people are familiar with the distinction, but it's very, very important because regulation applies the same way in each country in Europe. Directive has to be implemented by each government, each parliament in each single country. So each country will make and give it its own twist to something which by nature is impossible to put in place. So I think I totally agree with Christoph, and it's what I said at the beginning. That's the problem with the regulation, that they try to regulate the innovation looking at the past, using past business model where you had the tour operator that were owning all the inventory, everything, and they're trying to do it in a new world where packages is dynamic, where the user can package together on one OTA, can package together on a meta search, can package together on a search engine like on Google. What then? You search for the flight and then you search for the hotel on Google. It's a package or not? Where is the boundary?
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid
long
we have to
discussion.
end it there. Thank you, Dirk, Michael, Andrea, Christoph, and Tobias.